So hello students. Now let us understand the embryology of head, face, neck. What is pharyngeal arches, ectodermal clefts, endodermal pouches, the pharyngeal arches, the development of thyroid, and finally the development of face. Okay. So let us understand this. To begin with, when the embryo is formed, the embryo is folded like this. Okay. The embryo is folded. Clear? That's the developing heart, that's the mouth, and this is the developing brain. So when the embryo is forming, the mouth is between the developing brain and the developing heart. There's no neck. There's no neck. Now what happens is we get a series of arches here. What are these arches known as? The pharyngeal arches. And these pharyngeal arches are going to take part in the formation of head, face, and neck. Clear? So now each pharyngeal arch, this area will be filled by what is known as the pharyngeal arches. Have a look at this slide. Look at this slide. So that's the developing mouth. This is the mouth here of the embryo. That's the brain. This is the brain, and that's the developing heart. So the mouth is lying between the developing brain and the developing heart. And now we get a series of arches here. Now this is the first arch, second arch, third arch. Okay. Now these arches come to lie in this area. So there, to begin with, there are 6 pharyngeal arches, out of which 1 disappears. The 5th disappears off. So now there are 5 pharyngeal arches. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 6th pharyngeal arch. 6th pharyngeal arch. So what is this section? Look, what is this section? This is a section. Look at this. So that's the developing mouth. These are the pharyngeal arches that we are going to get here. That's the developing heart here. This is the developing heart. That's the developing brain. That's the mouth here. And these are the pharyngeal arches. Clear? Now, each pharyngeal arch, let me just show you one slide. See, this is a section of the neck. This is a coronal section taken like this. So each pharyngeal arch from outside is like this. From outside is going to be what? Ectoderm. This from outside is going to be the ectoderm. And from inside, that's a GIT. That's the gastrointestinal tract, the GIT. So this is the GIT. So this from inside is going to be the endoderm. Endoderm. Clear? So from outside, the pharyngeal arches are lined by ectoderm. From inside, they're lined by endoderm. And in between, what is this going to be? The mesoderm. This is the mesoderm. So look at this. From outside, this is what we call as the ectodermal cleft. Cleft, 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 cleft. These are the ectodermal clefts. And from inside, these are the endodermal pouches. Pouches, 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 and pouches. So these are the endodermal pouches. Same here. Endodermal pouches here like this. And these are the ectodermal clefts here. These are the ectodermal clefts. Now, when we join this, when we join one like this, okay, I'm joining the endoderm, then carrying the mesoderm, and then finally carrying the ectoderm. So this becomes one pharyngeal arch, one pharyngeal arch. That means the pharyngeal arch will extend from this side to this side like that, this side to this side. Each pharyngeal arch will be bounded from what is outside ectoderm, then comes the mesoderm, and from inside it is going to be the endoderm. Endoderm. Clear to all of you? Are you clear? So each pharyngeal arch from outside would be lined by ectoderm, then is the mesoderm, and inside is the endoderm. So students, now let us understand the fate. What happens to this ectodermal clefts? What happens to this endodermal pouches? Right? So now understand what happens to this ectodermal cleft. The first ectodermal cleft, that's the first ectodermal cleft forms. What is this known as? This is the external acoustic meatus. External acoustic meatus. So the first ectodermal cleft invaginates inside, and that forms the external acoustic meatus. Fine. Now what happens to the second ectodermal cleft? The second ectodermal cleft will grow down like this. It will cover the rest of the clefts and it will fuse with the last one. It fuses with the last one. So the first ectodermal cleft is going to form the external acoustic meatus. The second ectodermal cleft grows over the others, covers the others, and fuses with the last one. Our neck becomes smooth. Our neck is smooth. Why? Because the second ectodermal cleft has overgrown the rest of them and fused with the last. So our neck becomes smooth, right? But suppose if this second ectodermal cleft does not fuse with the last one, suppose if it doesn't fuse with the last one, we get an opening here. We get an opening on the anterior border of sternocleidomastoid. Look at that. That's an opening at the anterior border of sternocleidomastoid, and this is what we call as a branchial. That's known as a cyst, branchial cyst, or a sinus. Branchial cyst or a sinus. Right. So if the second ectodermal cleft does not fuse with the last one, we get a small opening in front of the sternocleidomastoid, and this is what we call as a branchial cyst or a branchial sinus. And suppose if this tract is open here on the anterior border of sternocleidomastoid, and if this connects inside, it is open inside also, it communicates inside also. So this tract is open here, and suppose if it communicates here, it communicates in the region of the second endodermal pouch. Okay, it communicates in the region of second endodermal pouch. Now we'll see, students, what is derived from the second endodermal pouch is the palatine tonsil, and that is how, if this tract is open at both the ends, this is what we call as a branchial fistula. Branchial fistula. So what is a fistula? A fistula is a tract which is open at both the ends. If the tract is closed here, it's open only at one end, it is known as a sinus or a cyst. Fine. So branchial fistula outside here will communicate at the anterior border of sternocleidomastoid, and inside it would communicate with the palatine tonsil. Why palatine tonsil? Because that is derived from the second endodermal pouch. Perfect, students? Right? So we are discussing the fate of ectodermal cleft. What happens to the first ectodermal cleft? Forms the external acoustic meatus. This is what you're supposed to remember. The second ectodermal cleft grows down, fuses with the last, and the neck becomes smooth. If it doesn't fuse, we get an opening here, a branchial sinus. If it opens inside, it opens in the region of palatine tonsil, so that becomes a branchial fistula. Clear? So that's about the ectodermal clefts. Now coming to the endodermal pouches. Students, understand this now. So look here, this is the second ectodermal cleft which will grow down and fuse like this. So the rest of the clefts will get buried below this. The first is going to form the external acoustic meatus. That's it. Now coming to the endodermal pouches. That's the first endodermal pouch. Here first, second, third, fourth, and the last one is the sixth. The fifth is gone. So what happens to this endodermal pouches, students? The first endodermal pouch, let me just show you this. Okay, fine. So the first endodermal pouch shows an extension. Okay, or we'll make it like this. The first endodermal pouch, we'll start with the first endodermal pouch. It divides into a dorsal and a ventral part. So the first endodermal pouch divides into a dorsal and ventral part. The dorsal forms what is known as the tubotympanic recess. So the dorsal forms what is known as the tubotympanic recess, and this tubotympanic recess will form two things. It will form the middle ear cavity. Number one, it forms the middle ear cavity. That's the tympanic cavity. Tympanic cavity is the middle ear cavity, and it forms a tube. What is that? Eustachian tube, or I'll write it as auditory tube. Auditory tube. Okay. So the tubotympanic recess forms two things. One is the middle ear cavity, and one is the Eustachian tube. And now this Eustachian tube is going to open into the nasopharynx. We have already seen that. The other end of the Eustachian tube is going to communicate with the middle ear cavity. Understand? And this is the same Eustachian tube which goes above the superior constrictor. We have already discussed this, students. I hope this is clear. The ventral joins with the second. Okay, the ventral joins with the second endodermal pouch to form the palatine tonsil. The ventral joins with the second endodermal pouch to form the palatine tonsil. Clear? Just have a look at this slide. So now that's the first endodermal pouch. The first endodermal pouch divides into a dorsal part and a ventral part. So that's a dorsal part and that's a ventral part. The dorsal part is going to form, what is this known as? This is what we call as, one moment. This is what we call as the tubotympanic recess. This extension is the tubotympanic recess, and now this end is going to dilate here. This end will dilate and form the tympanic cavity. That's the middle ear cavity, and this is going to form a tube here, and this becomes the eustachian tube, and that is how the eustachian tube connects the middle ear cavity with what is this going to be in future? The pharynx, the nasopharynx. The ventral part of the first endodermal pouch joins with the second. And what is that? The palatine tonsil. That's the palatine tonsil. So what happens to the second endodermal pouch? The second endodermal pouch fuses with, yes, fuses with ventral part of the first, and forms the palatine tonsil. Okay, it forms the palatine tonsil. Is this clear to all of you? So what happens to the second? It joins with the ventral part of the first and forms the palatine tonsil. Perfect, students? Very good. Now coming to the third endodermal pouch. Third, understand this now. The third endodermal pouch. The third endodermal pouch again divides into a dorsal part and a ventral part. Dorsal and a ventral part, right? What is the dorsal part form? The dorsal part or the ventral part is going to form the thymus. The ventral part is going to form the thymus. Okay. And the dorsal part is going to form, just have a look at this. Okay, look at this. So that's the third endodermal pouch. The third endodermal pouch divides into two parts. This is the dorsal part and that's the ventral part. The dorsal part and the ventral part. Clear? So this ventral part will migrate down, and this is going to form the thymus here, thymus. And the dorsal part is going to form the parathyroid gland. And as this thymus is migrating down, the dorsal part of the third pouch also goes down with the thymus. The thymus is going down into the mediastinum, right? It's formed in the neck. Thymus is formed in the neck, but it is migrating down into the thorax. And as it is migrating down, the parathyroid gland also migrates down with the thymus. And suddenly the parathyroid gland remembers it had to go somewhere else. Where? The parathyroid gland had to go to the thyroid gland, right? It has to go to the thyroid gland, and it is descending down with the thymus. By the time it realizes that it has to go to the thyroid gland, by the time it migrates towards the thyroid gland, it is just able to hold the inferior pole of the thyroid gland. This parathyroid is located at the inferior pole of the thyroid gland. This parathyroid is therefore known as the inferior parathyroids. Inferior parathyroids. Clear? Understanding this? See, from the third we get inferior, and from the fourth pouch we get the superior parathyroids. There's a difference here. You understanding why? Because this is the third, that's dorsal ventral. The ventral part is migrating down to form the thymus. The dorsal part also goes down here and then forms the inferior parathyroids. Just remember that. That's how it is going to be. Okay, so where was that slide which we had written? One moment. Yeah. So the third endodermal pouch divides into a dorsal and ventral. The ventral forms the thymus and the dorsal forms the inferior parathyroid gland, inferior parathyroid gland. What happens to the fourth endodermal pouch? I mean, this is the third. The fourth fuses with the sixth. The fourth and the sixth fuses. Okay, we'll write it like this. Fourth again divides into a dorsal and the ventral. Dorsal and the ventral. The dorsal forms the superior parathyroid. Superior parathyroids. And the ventral part of the fourth fuses with the sixth. We'll make it like this. Fuses with the sixth pouch. Okay. The ventral part of the fourth fuses with the sixth pouch. Okay, it's not very clear here. So fuses with the sixth pouch. I'll make it like this. Fuses with the sixth pouch, and what does it form? It forms a body here. And what is this body known as? This is what we call as the ultimobranchial body. Ultimobranchial body. Okay, so the ventral part of the fourth fuses with the sixth pouch to form a body which is known as the ultimobranchial body, and this ultimobranchial body is going to give rise to the parafollicular C cells of thyroid. Parafollicular C cells of thyroid. Clear, students? That's how you remember it. So that's about the endodermal pouches. Endodermal pouches. I'll repeat this for you. I'll repeat this. Just one moment. I'll repeat this. Look at this once again. Look at this once again. So these are the endodermal pouches. So the first endodermal pouch divides into a dorsal part and a ventral part. The dorsal part forms what is this known as the tubotympanic recess. It forms two things. It forms the middle ear cavity and the eustachian tube. The ventral part joins with the second and forms the palatine tonsil. That's about the first. Coming to the second endodermal pouch. The second endodermal pouch joins with the ventral part of the first and forms the palatine tonsil. Now coming to the third endodermal pouch. The third divides into a dorsal part and a ventral part. The ventral part forms the thymus here. The dorsal part is going to form the inferior parathyroid. The fourth pouch divides into a dorsal and ventral part. The dorsal part forms the superior parathyroid. The ventral joins with the sixth pouch to form the ultimobranchial body. And this ultimobranchial body gives rise to the parafollicular C cells of thyroid. Parafollicular C cells of thyroid. I hope I'm clear to all of you students. So that's about the endodermal pouches. So you just have to know, you get MCQs on the fate or derivatives of ectodermal cleft and derivatives of endodermal pouches. Okay, so we talked about ectodermal clefts, we've done about endodermal pouches. Now let us understand the okay, look at this, answer this. Thymus develops from, any guesses here? Thymus develops from the third pouch ventral aspect, right? Which structure has all the three germ layers? That's the tympanic membrane, because tympanic membrane from outside would be lined by ectoderm, from inside would be lined by endoderm, and in between is the mesoderm. So what has all the three germ layers in it? That's a tympanic membrane. Clear to all of you? Just have a look at this slide also. So this is the GIT. So what is this from inside? That's the endoderm. Okay, so that's the first endodermal pouch, that's the tubotympanic recess, and that's the eustachian tube. This is the first ectodermal cleft. That's the first ectodermal cleft which forms the tubotympanic recess. So that is the, I'm so sorry, the first ectodermal cleft forms the external acoustic meatus. So this becomes the external acoustic meatus. This becomes the middle ear cavity which is lined by endoderm. So what is this structure in between? That's the tympanic membrane. So this tympanic membrane, from this side it is lined by ectoderm, from this side is the endoderm, and what is there in between? Mesoderm. So that's how the tympanic membrane has the three germ layers. Fine. So that is the palatine tonsil. The third forms the thymus and the inferior parathyroid. The fourth forms the superior parathyroid and the ultimobranchial body. Fine. This is clear to all of you, I suppose. Yes. Now coming to the pharyngeal arches. So now look at this, students. Just try to understand this. What is this from outside? Ectoderm from outside. This is endoderm from inside. Now we join this. This becomes the first pharyngeal arch, second, third, fourth, and sixth pharyngeal arches. So these are the six pharyngeal arches. I told you each arch has got a nerve of its own. There's a nerve of the arch. Each arch has got a muscular component, the muscular component which is going to form the muscles of the arches. So there's going to be a muscular component which forms the muscle of the arches. There's going to be a cartilaginous component which forms the cartilages and the bones of the arch, There's going to be an arterial component of the arch, artery of the arch, and there is going to be a nerve of the arch. So you just have to remember this. Which is the nerve of the first arch? We have been discussing this since many lectures. Nerve of the first arch is mandibular, right? Nerve of the first arch is mandibular nerve. Second arch, facial nerve. Third arch, glossopharyngeal. Fourth arch, superior laryngeal. And the nerve of the sixth arch is recurrent laryngeal. Clear? Which are the muscles derived from the first arch? Muscles, we have discussed this with the mandibular nerve. One, the nerve of the first arch is mandibular nerve. Muscles are the muscles of mastication. Second, the tensor palati, tensor tympani. Which are the muscles? The mylohyoid and the anterior belly of digastric. So these are the muscles which are derived from the first arch. Yes, clear? What is the cartilage of the first arch giving rise to? The cartilage of the first arch gives rise to um, which cartilages and the cartilage gives rise to cartilages and bones. So that is malleus. Malleus is derived from the first pharyngeal arch, and there are two ligaments of malleus: anterior ligament of malleus, and the spinomandibular ligament. Anterior ligament of malleus and the spinomandibular ligament. This is derived from the first arch. And the artery of the first arch is the maxillary artery. Maxillary artery. I'm not writing it, just understand this. So nerve, mandibular nerve, you know the muscles, the cartilages are going to form, yes, it forms the malleus, that's the bone in the ear, and two ligaments. One is the anterior ligament of malleus and the spinomandibular ligament, right? Which is the artery of the first arch? Maxillary artery. Right? Coming to the second arch, which is the nerve of the second arch? The facial nerve. What are the muscles in the second arch? The muscles of facial expressions. Then there's a muscle in the ear, stapedius. There's the posterior belly of digastric and stylohyoid. All these muscles are derived from the second pharyngeal arch. What are the ligaments of the second pharyngeal arch? So we have got the hyoid bone. So what is this for the hyoid bone? That's the lesser cornu of the hyoid bone, and that's the greater cornu of the hyoid bone, right? So the lesser cornu of the hyoid bone and the upper part of the body of hyoid bone, this one. So the lesser cornu and the upper part of the body of hyoid bone is derived from the second pharyngeal arch. The lesser cornu and the upper part of the body of hyoid bone is derived from the second arch. The styloid process is derived from the second pharyngeal arch. So these are the bones. The lesser cornu of the hyoid bone, the lesser cornu and the upper part of the body of hyoid bone, the styloid process, the incus and the stapes. Okay, clear, no? Fine. Now, which is the artery of the second arch? The artery of the second arch is the stapedial artery. Now, coming to the third arch, which is the nerve of the third arch? Glossopharyngeal nerve. Which is the muscle in the third arch? Stylopharyngeus muscle, right? Which is the bone derived from the third arch? That's the greater cornu of the hyoid bone and the lower part of the body of hyoid bone. Greater cornu and the lower part of the body of hyoid bone, that is derived from the third arch. Clear to all of you? Which is the nerve of the fourth arch? That's the superior laryngeal nerve. Which are the muscles in the fourth arch? The cricothyroid muscle. Which is supplied by external laryngeal nerve. The cartilages of larynx and pharynx are derived from the fourth and the sixth arches. The nerve of the sixth arch is recurrent laryngeal nerve. Clear? The muscles of the larynx are derived from the sixth arch. Is this clear? Fine. So malleus and incus is derived from the first arch. The stapes is derived from the second arch. Stapes bone. Malleus and incus in the first, stapes is from the second. Clear? So just remember the derivatives of the pharyngeal arches. This is what is asked in the exams, especially the nerves of the pharyngeal arches and the muscles of the pharyngeal arches. That much you remember. That's more than enough what is asked in the exams. Clear to all of you students? So that's about the ectodermal cleft, endodermal pouches, and the pharyngeal arches. We've seen the development of tongue in the lecture of the tongue. I've told you the development of tongue. So just tell me one thing. Look, this was the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. This is the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. That's the posterior 1/3, and that's the posterior most part of the tongue. What is this V-shaped sulcus known as sulcus terminalis? What is this foramen here known as? That's the foramen cecum. Now, if we look in a side view from a side view, if we look, uh, how do I draw this? Okay, so that's a tongue in a side view. So that's anterior 2/3, posterior 1/3. That's the foramen cecum. From this foramen cecum, there's a duct which grows down. There's a duct which grows down, and this duct divides to form the two lobes of thyroid gland. It forms the two lobes of thyroid gland. What is this duct known as? The thyroglossal duct. That means the thyroid gland is derived from the tongue, from the foramen cecum. From the foramen cecum, a duct grows down, and this duct then proliferates to form the two lobes of thyroid gland. This duct is what we call as thyroglossal duct. The thyroglossal duct then obliterates off. It goes off. But suppose if it remains, it results in the formation of a thyroglossal cyst or a thyroglossal sinus or a fistula. Thyroglossal cyst, sinus, or fistula. Clear to all of you students? So that's about the development of ectodermal clefts, endodermal pouches, the pharyngeal arches, and the development of thyroid gland. Development of the face will have a separate small lecture on it. Development of face is a separate lecture. Any doubts, students? Clear? Is this clear to all of you? Okay, answer this. Nerve of the first arch. Nerve of the first arch is trigeminal nerve. Trigeminal nerve, that's a mandibular nerve. Mandibular, to be specific. Facial nerve is a nerve. Facial nerve is a nerve, second arch, right? So now the first arch is trigeminal nerve, second arch is facial nerve, third arch is glossopharyngeal nerve. Vagus divides into two branches. This we have discussed in the earlier lectures. Vagus divides into a superior laryngeal nerve and a recurrent laryngeal nerve. Superior laryngeal nerve is a nerve of the fourth arch. Recurrent laryngeal nerve is a nerve of the sixth arch. The superior laryngeal further divides into an external laryngeal nerve and an internal laryngeal nerve. So all these details we have seen in the previous lectures. Just go through it. What they supply, what does the recurrent laryngeal nerve supply? Clear to all of you? Clear? Okay, fine. Which of the following muscle is derived from the first arch? Can anyone answer this? Yes, the answer is tensor tympani. Tensor tympani is derived from the first arch, so you need to know the muscles which are derived from the arches. Stylopharyngeus is derived from the third arch. Platysma is a muscle of facial expression. Platysma is here, it's a muscle of horror. Muscle of horror is platysma, so that is derived from the second arch. Cricothyroid is derived from the fourth arch because cricothyroid is supplied by the external laryngeal nerve, which is a branch of superior laryngeal. So cricothyroid would be derived from the fourth arch. Clear, students? I hope this is clear to all of you. So once again, I'll just quickly recapitulate. The nerves of the first pharyngeal arch is mandibular nerve. The muscles of mastication, tensor pallidi, tensor tympani, mylohyoid, anterior belly of digastric. The bones and the ligaments is the malleus and the incus, anterior ligament of malleus, and the spinomandibular ligament. The artery is maxillary artery. Second arch, nerve is facial nerve, muscles of facial expressions. The stapedius muscle, stapedius in the ear. Okay, then the posterior belly of digastric and the stylohyoid. The bone which is formed here is the stapes, right? The styloid process, the lesser cornu and the upper part of the body of hyoid bone. The stylomandibular ligament is formed here, right? So these are the ligaments. Third arch, glossopharyngeal nerve, muscle is stylopharyngeus muscle. Fourth arch, superior laryngeal nerve, the muscle is cricothyroid. Sixth arch is recurrent laryngeal nerve. The muscles of larynx and pharynx is derived from the sixth arch. Clear, students? I hope, students, this lecture is clear to you. In case of doubts, do get back to me. Thank you.